Hello, welcome back. It's a nice, cozy Saturday morning. So here are 5 cute, cozy reads that'll make you smile and perhaps even make you cry a little bit. It's 2024, and cozy comfort reads are all the rage. Sometimes you don't want to read a story about saving the world, killing the Dark Lord. Sometimes you just want to feel good. And a lot of people are releasing the recommendations for cozy reads that make them smile. And I think it's time that I throw my hat in the ring. One thing I like about cozy fiction is that it can mean several things. It can mean found family. It can mean a book that's nostalgic that brings you back to your past where life was less complicated and more comfortable. It can mean a lot of things, and all these books are cozy in their own way, and I hope you like them. The first book I'm going to talk about is Across the Green Grass Fields by Shauna McGuire. This is one of the standalone installments in the Wayward Children series. It's a portal fantasy YA series that's getting a lot of love, and for good reason. This installment follows Reagan, a young girl who's dealing with a lot of issues that comes with maturity. Some common, some not so common. She walks through a magical doorway into another world. The Hooflands, a land filled with unicorns and centaurs and satyrs, all manner of hoofed creatures. This read is just incredibly cute. You know, if you're one of those individuals that always wanted to grow up on a farm and ride horses and that wishes all these fantastical hoofed creatures were real, you'll find this read to be very cozy. There's found family. There's friendships that grow as you grow up in maturity through several life stages. There's some sad parts, but you're never going to be distracted from the cozy subject matter of this book. The setting is cozy. The friendships and family relationships are cozy. And our protagonist learns a lot about herself. And that's what I like in this book. That's what I find cozy about this installment. Also, side note, it's one of the many entrance points into the Wayward Children series, which is amongst my favorite series in fantasy. The next book I want to talk about is a little bit of a curveball because it's written by an author who is not known for cozy, cute reads, and that book is Elevation by Stephen King. Elevation tells the story of Scott Carey, an older gentleman who one day wakes up and realizes that he's losing weight rapidly, despite his body mass remaining the same. So it's like thinner, but not so scary. Couple this with the fact that a lesbian couple has moved into town, and they're opening up a rather successful restaurant, and you have a nice story about overcoming prejudice and learning how to love and accept people for who they are. Not generally things you would couple with Stephen King. This book is incredibly cozy. It is very cute. I love the characters and the relationships and the dialogue, and it'll just make you feel good. This story is about acceptance. It is about found family. It's about coming to terms with the mortality that we all have to suffer through, with growing old, with dealing with very rare ailments, and the ending of this book is just incredibly cathartic. Most people will probably raise their eyebrows at the idea of Stephen King writing a nice, cute little book that could be a lifetime special, but that is exactly what Elevation is. And whenever I think about this book, it just brings a smile to my face. And I think if you're not familiar with Stephen King and you're not aware of how adaptable and flexible of an author he is, then Elevation will definitely change some of your misconceptions you may have about this author, my favorite author. There are few authors that'll make me smile across several genres. And to be fair, there's not very many authors that will try several genres and do so successfully. But T. Kingfisher is one of those authors. She writes horror, she writes fantasy, she writes sci-fi. And her book, 9 Goblins, is just such a cute, lovable, cozy novella. It's a high fantasy adventure following a battalion of goblins who are generally seen as monstrous, scary creatures in fantasy settings, in fantasy stories. But the goblins in this story are just so cute and relatable and immature and harmless. The humans and elves are definitely the bad guys in this setting from my point of view, because they're just silly, harmless little creatures. And this is a story about overcoming prejudice and loving your friends for who they are and not expecting people to be who they're not. There is such funny, nonsensical attributes and factors and things about this read that are just had me smiling and laughing to myself. There is a sentient teddy bear, possibly. There's a sergeant who just is out of cares to give, who's just losing her patience, and she's basically just a glorified babysitter for these other goblins. There's a scene where an elf is acting as a midwife for a unicorn giving birth, with some pretty visceral, disgusting descriptions, and that may just put you off, but it's such a cozy, funny read. And the climax of this book ends in such a cathartic, but incredibly silly way. And this book, despite the fact that there's some life and death stakes, you'll be pretty dang comfortable throughout. And I was never once jostled and unsettled by this read, but it makes you think. It makes you think about prejudice. It makes you think about acceptance. It makes you think about, why are we all doing this? We're just normal people. Sometimes forces outside our control are pushing us to do things that we would never do against our better natures. It's a silly read, but it's thought-provoking. It's very cute. It's very cozy. It'll definitely make you smile. And T. Kingfisher, I could recommend all the books I've read from her because she has such a funny, whimsical way of writing. Very Terry Pratchett-esque, if I do say so myself. Of course, it wouldn't be a 5 cozy reads if I didn't include Travis Baldry's Legends and Lattes. This is a story of high fantasy and low stakes. It's been getting a lot of love on YouTube, and for good reason, because a lot of people love fantasy, and they weren't too familiar with cozy fantasy until this book came on the scene. This tells the story of Viv, an orc adventurer who is done fighting for a living. She just wants to retire and live a peaceful life. So she chooses to settle down in a new city, and she wants to open up a shop. A shop where they serve a very exotic and unknown beverage, a beverage called coffee. I am not a coffee drinker, but despite that, I was still able to enjoy this story, watching her build this business from the ground up, helping her, watching her do research about how to operate this business, her hiring employees, making friends and allies in the community, dealing with tensions and all the stressfulness of starting her own business. It was just incredibly cute. It'll bring a smile to your face. The characters she encounters and the way these relationships just develop organically was just very lifelike and very relatable. And who can't relate to taking a new direction in your life? I'm fairly young, but I've still made several different turns in my life that I was never going to ever predict when I was younger. And if you're like me, and sometimes you wonder, could I live my life in this way? Could I chase this career path? Could I be this individual? Could I change? If you ask yourself those questions, and I'm pretty sure if you're a human you do, you will find a lot of things that you love about this book. Viv's a very fun protagonist. This story has very low stakes for the most part, but I was smiling throughout, and I finished it, and there was a nice sense of catharsis, and I'm sure Viv lives the rest of her life in happiness and in peace. So if you're looking for a nice, peaceful, cozy, fantastical read, Legends and Lattes, you just can't miss. Sometimes, when you return home after a long journey, you smile, but oftentimes tears are brought to your eyes. Because something can be cozy and something can be comfortable while also making you feel great sadness sometimes. And this book may not be cozy, depending on your point of view, but I found A Man Called Uva to be an incredibly heartwarming, cozy, while at the same time bringing tears to my eyes 9 times. I cried 9 times during this book, but I still say it's one of the coziest, most comfortable, most homey books I've ever read. It follows Uva, and he's just a grumpy, crotchety old man. And at first, he's so unlikable that it's comical. But his life takes a turn when new people move next door to him. A family that's expecting Oh, crap. That was going good, though. The final book I want to talk about. The final book I want to talk about is a read that is both cozy and heartwarming, while also heartbreaking and incredibly sad at some points. Because this book is like going home for me. When you go home, you're happy to see the people you've left behind. You're happy to talk about things from your past. But sometimes you live life, sad things happen, they bring tears to your eyes, and they just help you to get to know yourself and the people around you, the people you love, a lot better. And A Man Called Uva is just such a complete read for me. One of my favorite books I've ever read, by far. It follows Uva, just the crotchetiest, grumpiest, funniest old man you'll ever encounter. And he's so unlikable in the beginning that it's laughable, it's comical. And he's an old man that has lived through a lot of experiences. And he's living in the twilight of his life. And his life takes a pretty drastic turn when a new family moves next door to him. And they are stretching and pushing Uva in ways that he has not been pushed in many, many years. This book holds the record for making me cry the most of any book I've ever read. I cried 11 times when I read A Man Called Uva 2 or 3 years ago, because there are just some heart-wrenching, heart-breaking scenes in this book. Because Uva is just a protagonist that, if you've ever heard the adage, like, if you knew everything about a person, you couldn't help but love them, Uva is that man, because this is not so much a story of character development, but like reader development, reader advancement. Like, Uva does not change throughout the entirety of this read, but we learn more about his past, and we're like, dang, I love Uva. He's perfect. Yes, he's crotchety and grumpy, but it's for damn good reason. And he's just so lovable. And underneath this rough exterior, there's just such an incredibly great human being. If you're like me, and one of your favorite tropes is found family, you'll love this book. The supporting cast of characters are very colorful and lifelike. The individuals that Uva talks about in his past that are still existing in his present, just seeing how those relationships develop and evolve and devolve, and how friendships wax and wane, it's just so very much like real life. And the climax of this book was riveting. And the development of these characters around Uva as they learn to love and accept him for who he is just incredibly heartwarming. The falling action and resolution of this book is amongst the most cathartic endings I've ever experienced. And after finishing A Man Called Uva, I just remember just talking to myself, thinking to myself, being like, I wish I could reread this book again for the first time, because it was just such an exciting, loving, comforting journey. So, A Man Called Uva may not be cozy for a lot of people, because there's some very dark moments and some very high moments. But for me, cozy means lifelike. It means relatable. It means home. And A Man Called Uva is just exactly that book that comes to mind when I think of cozy. So, there you have it. 5 cute, cozy books that'll make you smile, recommended by me. These books very quickly came to my mind when I was thinking about cozy book recommendations, and they kind of cover the whole spectrum of what makes a book cozy, in my opinion. If you have any other cozy book recommendations to recommend me, leave them in the comments below. I also have book review videos for, I think, all of these books on the channel. I'll put the link to those somewhere on the screen. But they're pretty old, so maybe the quality's not too good, but they're there. So, there you have it. 5 cute, cozy reads recommended by me. I think they'll make you smile like they made me smile. This is my first list video, and I think I'm pretty happy with my choice, my selection. I think it covered the whole spectrum of what makes a book, what makes a reading experience cozy. If you have any other cozy book recommendations for me, leave them in the comments below. I'm excited to hear what you have to recommend to me. Push the little thumbs up icon below if you like this video. Subscribe to my channel if you want to hear me talk about any other books, because I read a lot of them. And I'll see you guys next time.